Now come along and listen to us talk with the Bond Jam. Go and have a lovely little walk with the Bond Jam. Maybe put it on and go to bed with the Bond Jam. Or grab yourself a slice of toast and spread with the Bond Jam.
Hello and welcome to Bond Jam with me, Simon Jeffrey, and I'm joined by the all off to my gogol, it's Mr. James Turner.
See, I quite like both of those characters. I think I've got a fair deal there. I thought Smallbone might have been in there, but I think you've probably used her as one already, have you not?
Possibly. I could have gone Smallbone to Moneypenny, but...
it's too obvious.
No, I felt like comparing the Russian generals today.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the worst it's ever been. How are you, James? Raring to go as always?
Raring to go. I can't believe we're on Octopussy already. Well, we say that however many years we've been doing this anyway, but yeah.
Yes, we've only been doing this for 6 years and we've managed to get to the 13th movie in the series. Look at us go. So, today we are talking about Octopussy, and as we did on our last movie episode, For Your Eyes Only, we had a little new fact section at the start, which I'd like to continue. I'd like to jump straight in with what I'm calling Factopussy.
Oh, very good.
To contextualise us and put us in the mind of this movie we're about to discuss. So, fact number 1. Octopussy was released in June of 1983, 4 months ahead of rival Bond movie Never Say Never Again. This was the year of 2 Bond movies. We've been through the story several times before, but the quickest version of it is that one particular producer retained the rights to make a Bond film based on Thunderball, so he did a remake and managed to coax Sean Connery back into the role, causing something of a bit of, I don't know if it was friendly competition, probably quite determined competition between the two studios.
Definitely.
Octopussy grossed $187.5 million on a budget of $27.5 million, while Never Say Never Again grossed $160 million against a budget of $36 million. Now, I don't think either of us are particularly surprised that Octopussy outgrossed Never Say Never Again.
No, but the power of Connery, I was surprised by. I thought Connery might have brought more in.
I was surprised that Never Say Never Again had a higher budget.
Well, that's probably goes most of it to Connery anyway, doesn't it?
I think that's all Rowan Atkinson money.
Completely forget he's in that.
If you ever do if you're ever on Pointless and that Rowan Atkinson films comes up, try Never Say Never Again.
Yeah, it's good.
Do you have any facts, James? I haven't told you to prepare any, so
you know what? I completely forgot about this section. But we talked about the Octopussy Never Say Never debate, and the original plan was Roger Moore was going to bow out with For Your Eyes Only. I think when they got wind of the fact that Sean Connery was back for Never Say Never Again, I think they had to pull out the big guns and stick with Roger Moore. I know Josh Brolin was one of the people that was... Did I say Josh Brolin?
James Brolin.
James Brolin, sorry. James Brolin was
father
one of
of Josh.
Yes, father of Josh. Was one of the main contenders for that.
There was some question about whether Roger Moore would continue. I think he had initially a 3 or 4 movie contract, and then his contract was just on a rolling basis after that. So he was never contracted for 7 movies. It was always on a per film basis, do you want to come back? There was some debate about whether he was going to, and even a little bit of tension, as I understand it, when he discovered that Cubby Broccoli had been auditioning people without his knowledge. But ultimately, as we know, he did decide to come back for this film, plus 1 more afterwards, before finally departing the series.
Mm-hmm.
So, Octopussy's backstory is based on the Fleming short story, Octopussy, while the auction sequences at Sotheby's were adapted from the short story The Property of a Lady.
Yes.
This film marks the first appearance of Robert Brown as M in what would go on to be a set of 4.
Yes.
And we'll get to it in our opinion section of the podcast, but I think highly underrated M.
Yeah, I agree. He's the M of the 80s for me. So yeah, he's a good M. He's a solid M.
Do you want to take a stab at some of the highest grossing movies of 1983,
Ooh, 1983.
James?
I
should say,
well,
reports on this are different depending on where you look. I'm looking at Wikipedia, and I'm looking at the highest grossing for the US. So
was Temple of Doom was that 83?
No, that was the following year, I believe.
Right,
Octopussy comes in at number 6,
Okay.
ahead of Sudden Impact, Staying Alive, Mr. Mom, and Risky Business. At number 5, we have War Games with Matthew Broderick.
I got quite
Trading
high.
Places at number 4. Flashdance at number 3. Terms of Endearment at number 2. And way out ahead at number 1, we have Return of the Jedi.
Of course, yeah.
Which left them all in the dust, effectively. But Octopussy, not quite as high grossing as For Your Eyes Only, but still up there in the top 10. And speaking of Star Wars, my final fact, because I was a massive Star Wars geek even before I was a Bond geek, is that this film features a surprising number of minor role actors from the Star Wars films. And at one point, my younger self was very excited to see in the circus scene Octopussy sat alongside 2 actors who play US officers who both appear in the Star Wars films. Richard Leparmentier, I may have pronounced that wrong, who is the US aide, who says something like, "Oh, the general's going to get a big blast out of this."
Yeah.
He's the officer on the Death Star who gets choked by Darth Vader in the first film.
Well, I mean, this facts section is really useful with this trivia section because that's something I never knew about. So it's
and the general who Magda pickpockets, Bruce Bower, has been on all sorts of things.
Son
But
of a gun.
he played General Riken in The Empire Strikes Back, the leader of the Hoth base.
Okay.
Who bids farewell to Han Solo before he leaves to take care of Jabba the Hutt. He's in all sorts of stuff. He was in Full Metal Jacket, and one of my personal favourites, Faulty Towers, he appeared in as well, as a snooty American customer. Alongside those two, which were the only two I really recognised as a kid, but there's Dermot Crowley, who was in The Return of the Jedi. He played General Maydean. He plays one of the Russian people who tells them about how to set the bomb.
Oh, yeah.
He's in all sorts of things. He's in Luther as well, other stuff. And, of course, Jeremy Bulloch, who plays Smithers, also played Boba Fett in the original Star Wars trilogy.
So 2 actors had a very busy 1983.
Yes, and one that I didn't know was Andy Bradford, who was a stunt performer who played 009 in Octopussy. Also played an Imperial officer in Star Wars who talks to Darth Vader at one point. He was also in Never Say Never Again and For Your Eyes Only. So
Another busy year, yeah.
So there you go.
I learn something new every day.
And that was Factopussy.
Factopussy.
Don't make jingles, they change every episode, James. And now, James, to kick us off, what I'd like you to do, if possible, could you summarise the plot of Octopussy for me, please?
So I'm going to stick to the plot purely, so I may miss some characters out here, but 009, we're introduced to 009, he's running away from 2 knife-throwing twins, and is killed and then later found dead, dressed as a clown with a fake Fabergé egg in his hand. So Bond is sent to investigate this murder, and the real egg is being auctioned off in London. So I'm not really sure what he's expecting to find there. I think he's just trying to find the seller or identify the seller of the real egg. I'm not sure why he thinks that will lead him to a bad guy, but it will do anyway. But anyway, he finds himself in a bidding war with a guy called Kamal Khan. So Bond swaps the egg for the fake one, or puts the fake one in there and gets the real one, and Kamal Khan buys the fake egg. And clearly, because Kamal Khan looks quite shifty, and he clearly is the bad guy, Bond decides to follow him to India. While this is all happening, a Russian general called Orlov reveals to his comrades that he wants to attack Europe, and invade their countries. I mean, at this point, it's sounding quite ahead of its time already. But the returning General Gogol is like, no, we can't do that. The NATO will fight back and send nuclear warheads and stuff like that. But Orlov is a bit like, I don't care what you think. Anyway, back with Bond. Kamal Khan. I'm gonna say his girlfriend. I don't know what the relationship is, but anyway, Bond seduces her, but she steals the real egg from Bond. But whilst that happens, she reveals that she's got an octopus tattoo on her body, which she calls My Little Octopussy. Bond is kidnapped, though, straight away, taken to Kamal's place, where he finds that Orlov is working with Khan to do jewellery smuggling or something like that. But something dodgy is going on, as well as not just jewellery smuggling. Bond later meets the real Octopussy, who the tattoo was named after, and she owns like a circus that is used to smuggle the jewellery from Russia, I think, into the West. But little does Octopussy know that Orlov and Khan actually planning to swap the jewellery with a nuclear bomb. The plan would then be the plan would be the bomb explodes in Germany, and people will believe it was just like an accident, and people are like, let's get rid of the nuclear bombs, we shouldn't be doing this, and Russia can then be free to invade Europe. Bond stops the bomb, Gogol catches up with Orlov, Bond and Octopussy then take down Khan. The end.
Yes, very well done, James. And may I say, there's a reassuring level of confusion in your voice that makes me think that I'm not alone.
Okay.
Because I've watched this film so many times, but I've only ever really vaguely followed what was going on.
Yeah. You just go with the flow. That's how I found.
You touched upon it just there a little bit at the end there, and what became quite apparent to me on my last watch was just how much the topic of nuclear war and fear of nuclear war played into this plot. So I did a bit of Googling, because neither of us were alive in 1983. But suffice it to say, this was very much an issue in the news at the time.
Right.
The second wave of the CND was in full force. The campaign for nuclear disarmament was all over the news. You'll recognise the sort of peace symbol that they used to use. And really, Cold War fear was at an all-time high at this point in history. So with that historical context, it's very much playing into that with the plot that they decided to show in this movie. Funnily enough, my cousins were almost given the initials CND until their parents realised that would be the same initials as the then very topical campaign for nuclear disarmament, so they swapped them around.
Oh, interesting.
So the movie begins in a country that I'm not entirely sure, but is it meant to be Cuba?
I think it is, but
It
really
kind of
it's
looks
probably
like
Pinewood.
Pinewood backlot or something. It's got a very sort of English-looking overcast sky at times.
Yeah.
But this begins a sort of almost a Hitman-esque level of
Yeah, you're right. Actually.
Costume swapping and disguises. This is a proper disguise-filled movie, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Toro, you've got a clown, you've got a gorilla.
At one point, he's wearing a knife thrower's outfit underneath a gorilla outfit.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But yes, I've always liked Roger with a fake moustache.
Yeah, it's a really cool opening sequence. I think it's nothing to do with the plot, but it's a fun little mini mission.
So watching this made me wonder one thing.
What's that?
In all of their plans to replace Toro with Bond and take his place, to plant a bomb on the plane and destroy whatever operation is going on in this scene, why did they not ensure that Toro wouldn't be there?
I'm going to go with the fact that he wasn't meant to be there, but maybe, I don't know, he just randomly changed his plans last second. It was like, I might have forgot my lunch or something, and he's just come back for his lunch, and then...
Because it was a bit of a sort of Mission Impossible scene But you know, in a Mission Impossible movie, there'd be a scene of them taking that guy out first to take his place.
Yeah, I don't think they thought this mission fully through.
But as we said, I think on one of our previous episodes, this would make a great video game.
Yeah, it would be cool.
Sneaking around, taking costumes.
Yeah.
I'd love it if you had to find the Toro costume. Maybe Bond didn't arrive in it, but you had to take it off someone. I've still got my fingers crossed for something like this in Project 007, if and when it finally appears.
Yeah. I mean, when did we do that episode about our wishes for that game? I mean, it was still waiting for it. But
yeah, it was first announced, I think, 4 years ago. So it's still ongoing. I mean, no news has said that it's been cancelled yet, but
no, hopefully just taking the time.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So this is a fun opening sequence.
Yeah, we're introduced to the Akastar minijet.
Yeah, that's a scary looking vehicle, isn't it? It just looks too small to be controllable.
Yeah. The fact that it's real and everything, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed with that bit where it goes through the barn doors, or not the barn doors, the hangar doors.
Yeah.
I always impresses me how well that was shot for the time.
I feel like sometimes the DVD extras give away too much. And the DVD extras on the Octopussy DVD back in the day, they make a point of showing that it was connected to the chassis of a car with a pole, and they put foreground people and objects to obscure that. And I don't think I'd ever noticed it before that, and I can't not see it now. Why did you point that out? It's glaringly obvious now that you said it, that it's just a plane on a stick being driven through a hangar. I watched this movie with my 10-year-old stepson, who up until that point had only watched 3 of the Brosnan Bond movies.
Oh, okay.
And I thought,
right.
this is the one to introduce him to Roger Moore with, I think. And he thought the fake backside of a horse was very silly indeed. That was met with much laughter.
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean, you almost think surely just a covered trailer door would have less suspicion than a fake horse.
Yeah, probably.
It sets the tone early on, doesn't it?
Yeah. Octopussy, when you compare it to maybe For Your Eyes Only, it has it keeps the serious tone but brings back some of the Moonraker-esque humour, doesn't it, for this one?
So then we have the opening title song and sequence.
Yeah. What do you think of All Time High as a song for you?
It's okay. I find it a little bit wishy-washy and wet.
Yeah.
To be honest, my main takeaway from the sequence was more to do with the title sequence itself. Thinking this is not one of Maurice Binder's best.
I think there's a point where there's a lack of invention in some cases, isn't there?
Well, the story goes that he would often leave it till the very last minute and worry the producers by having nothing prepared, and then, he'd always pull it out the bag and do something miraculous. And you think, I don't know, with that knowledge in mind, you can kind of picture this being thrown together. That there's not really any coherent narrative between the images we're being shown, and it's just silhouettes of people being slung around and spun around the screen.
Is it with a laser projection sort of thing?
Yeah. It's like Maurice Binder's got a new laser pen and he wants everyone to know about it. There's one bit where it's just like this really gratuitous shot of a woman's chest.
Yes.
That's only covered by like just some thin straps across the nipples. And then it moves up to her face and she's just kind of like awkwardly holding her hair. And you can always tell on film when they do a freeze frame because the film grain freezes in place as well. So I guess it's still got that kind of optical composite roughness about it where the overlays kind of pop in and then disappear off. Like nothing ever sort of fades in or fades out, and we're not at the digital age yet. So, with people kind of flying out of a gun that's emitting this beam of light. But, you know, there's always a bit of a hard edge on some of these images, or they're not quite lined up where the gun barrel is. And I'm nitpicking.
Yeah.
But I just feel like by this point, I think Maurice Binder was not trying much new.
Yeah.
He's done some absolute classics in his past, not just in the Bond series, but this just seemed to be wheel in the beautiful ladies, take their clothes off,
Shine a laser.
Shine lasers at them.
Yeah, I mean, the song itself, like you say, is a bit wishy-washy, but I appreciate it more once I've heard the instrumental version of it with My Little Octopussy from the soundtrack, which is, once I've heard that, I appreciate the song a lot more.
Yes, it's used several times throughout as an incidental score, and it makes for a great backing track in those scenes.
Yeah.
I think there's something about that opening saxophone that always puts me off when I'm
Yeah,
listening to it.
it's misleading, I think. I think you hear that, na, 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 na. It's like, oh, it's awful. And then once it gets going, give it a chance. Just give it a chance.
Yes, so tonal shifts continue as we enter the post-title scene, and we've got a clown on the run from a knife man. And there is sort of like an up and down in tone, isn't there, throughout this film, where this is quite a chilling sequence.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really dark. Not just in lighting, but in terms of tone. He's running for his life. Yeah, loses the egg.
This whole business with eggs, it leans pretty hard into this throughout the film. And, I mean, it could have been anything, ultimately, couldn't it? It could have been necklaces, diamonds, rings, or something. It's a true MacGuffin in that sense. That
Yeah, and I quite like it. I would never have heard of a Fabergé egg if it was not for Octopussy.
Then we have a contentious scene back at MI6.
Oh yes, so we meet Penelope Smallbone.
Well, I must say you become more beautiful every day.
I am over here.
Well, of course you are.
And this is Miss Penelope Smallbone, my new assistant.
Do you think that their intention was to keep Smallbone in the series?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that was.
Do you think that was
the intention?
She was lined up. Was she lined up as a replacement?
Surely. I mean, why would you bring her in? The new Lois Maxwell was getting on a bit.
Yeah, well, Lois Maxwell and Roger Moore were the same age, weren't they?
Yeah. And I imagine, well, obviously Octopussy was meant to, again, be Roger Moore's last Bond film. So I imagine they were both going to retire at the same time. And obviously when he came back for A View to a Kill, they got Lois Maxwell back. There was probably saying no point to get Smallbone, but I reckon if A View to a Kill had a different Bond actor, would we be seeing Smallbone in the next film?
You mean to ease the transition between Bond actors?
Yeah, I was wondering that, yeah.
Maybe, but part of me just thinks, look, if you knew that was going to be Roger's, or if you thought it was going to be Roger's last at the time, why not just use the next film as the perfect opportunity to, say, fresh start?
Yeah, that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
We've touched upon this, I think. We ranked her at the bottom of our MI6 tier list for ageism reasons.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you look back at the series and very few times has Bond ever had a love interest of his own age.
Yeah.
I mean, Octopussy was, she's portrayed as one of the more mature Bond women of Roger Moore's era, but even then, he had about 18 years on her even then. Carol Bouquet in the film before was almost 30 years younger than him. But typically they're anywhere from 10 to 18 years age gap between most of the Bond actors and the leading ladies. So the idea that, go on, Roger can have a couple more, but Lois is being aged out.
Yeah.
It's not a good look.
No, and it's probably it is for the best that we don't see Smallbone again.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that she does that kind of
that sigh.
Wistful sigh. Yeah. Like she doesn't know him at all.
Yeah. We're then introduced to Robert Brown's M,
Well, now we're out of Factopussy, we can share a few more of our opinions in Opinion Pussy.
Yeah.
What I realised, and I could be misremembering, but I thought, you know what? In Robert Brown's 4 appearances as M, he really, it feels like he does more than Bernard Lee did in his, 11.
What do you mean by does more?
I mean, Robert Brown meets up with Bond in Berlin.
Yes, he does.
Gives
yeah.
him gives him the missions on the go. In mid mission, goes and meets him out there. In A View to a Kill, he gets to go to the horse races. The Living Daylights, he's out on a mission with him again, and he has that scene at the Bladen safe house. And License to Kill, again, he has that, quite intense scene with Bond where he resigns, and it just felt like the variety of scenes that Robert Brown's M got to have sort of outweighed Bernard Lee's scenes in terms of, typically Bernard Lee would be in the office or, every now and then he'd get out and about, at a different office.
Like Egypt in
Egypt, or,
Spelling,
he'd be on a submarine in You Only Live Twice, for instance.
Yeah.
And I could be misremembering, and I'm not slating Bernard Lee at all. I'm really just saying that to highlight that I think Robert Brown is
Gets out
underappreciated. And I don't think that you'd watch this and know that it's his first time. I think he smashes it.
Yeah.
Straight out of the gate. I think he's a strong M, a different M, a more no-nonsense M, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I like it.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing at all.
Shout out to Robert Brown. And we have Douglas Wilmer in this scene, and the auction scene as Fanning.
Yeah, and I put that as one, it's up there with one of my favourite non-action scenes in the Bond franchise, where it's just a really enjoyable sequence. That auction, it should be a really, really boring sequence. I think we've done this when we ranked Allies, maybe, or something like that.
Yes.
I feel like we've had this conversation before, but that scene could be such a boring scene, but it's really, really interesting and fun to watch.
I like in that MI6 scene when M thanks him for his little briefing, and he just does a little, not at all, but it's such a kind of
I'm really happy to be here.
Intimate, lovey, not at all, that it's like, is there some history there?
Oh, right, you're saying on that route, okay.
It's just a nice touch. He's quite well known as playing, among other things, Sherlock Holmes.
Yes,
in a number of,
he is.
I think, TV movies of the 60s, possibly 70s. But as such, I think he made a cameo appearance in one of the Cumberbatch Sherlock episodes.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, as a Diogenes Club member.
Yeah.
And I just remember watching that going, it's the guy from Octopussy, not realising the Sherlock Holmes connection, which is almost certainly the reason he's there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, definitely one of those roles that could have been a throwaway, forgettable MI6 expert role, like Colethorpe from Man with the Golden Gun, for instance. But it's imbued with a little bit more charm and humour to make it memorable. What is actually still only a short sequence, but the scene where he's getting increasingly flustered and terrified at the auction house is wonderful.
Oh yeah. It's also where we meet Kamal Khan and Magda.
Yes. Sandwiched in between the MI6 scene and the auction scene, we have that short Moscow war room scene where we get to meet
Orlov as well.
Orlov, who's chewing the scenery. Stephen Burkoff, as he always does.
Yeah. He does look a bit like Putin as well, which is obviously purely coincidental.
I know some contemporary reviews that were slightly scornful of his overacting, but I really think it adds to it. It kind of really plays into this idea of Cold War fear. It's nice to balance out General Gogol, who we know from previous movies as being fairly even-tempered.
Yeah. He's a really good counterpart to Orlov.
What I'd forgotten before I watched this again more recently is how much of the film takes place in India. Now, obviously, I knew Bond went to India, but in my head, when I think of the film, I sort of picture the circus and the train and all that stuff in and around Germany. But it's almost an hour, I think, that we spend in India, and it gets a little bit sort of cliched Western ideal of Indian tourism. You know, let's have a market square in this street where various people are just doing
lying on nail beds,
various stereotypically Indian things, I suppose. But it's where we meet Vijay, played by Vijay Amritraj, I think his name is, which still baffles me as to the casting and his character, because I really like Vijay, and we talked about him before.
Is one of our favourite allies. Yeah, it really should not work. He's a professional tennis player who's playing an undercover agent who's pretending to be a tennis player.
So just to clarify, Vijay Amritraj was a fairly famous professional tennis player who appeared in a Bond film as Bond's ally, Vijay, using his own name, and part of his cover in the film was that he was working at a tennis club.
Yeah.
I mean, what would a modern example be of that?
Was it something like Roger Federer?
Like Daniel Craig meeting up with his Swiss contact, Roger, played by Roger Federer, called Roger, whose cover is working at a tennis club and who makes frequent references to his tennis play.
Yeah.
And during a fight, uses a tennis racket.
Yeah. Makes no sense, but for some reason it really works in this. Well, maybe not the tennis racket bit, but well, yeah.
Oh, I think it does. I think it's well in keeping with the tone of the movie. The movie has this sort of confident swagger of a movie that knows its audience by this point and doesn't care about any competition.
No.
Well, I would have taken that double myself.
Then why don't you take over the major's position? Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
So we meet Kamal Khan, the exiled Afghan prince, who's played by a French man with no attempt to make him seem like an Afghan prince at all. But I'm grateful they didn't sort of colour him in a different colour.
Yeah.
I think Louis Jourdan is very suave and sophisticated. He does a lot of excellent hand acting, a lot of...
Yeah.
I don't know, it's hard to explain, but just watch it again and watch his hand acting.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, I think he's a good villain. I like that the fact that he's not totally in charge all the time as well. He's the main villain, but Orlov outranks him, and
he doesn't even attempt to outpower Octopussy.
No,
when she says no to him. Do you remember the? Because we're introduced to Kabir Bedi's Gobinda in this scene as well. The kind of token strongman henchman character who demonstrates his strength. A little bit like Oddjob crushing the golf ball, isn't it?
Yes,
Throwback to that of like crushing the dice.
But I like him. I think, you know, you say just like he is essentially the typical throwaway henchman, but I think he has more to do. I think he has more scenes to play in. Rather, where you look at Cha or Chang, whatever you just want to call him in Moonraker, who is completely forgettable. At least Gobinda has more memorable moments for him.
Well, that's because he's played by an actor rather than Michael G. Wilson's Aikido instructor.
that might have something to do with it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, as you say, he has more to do because there's an awful lot of doors that need locking, and he does love to lock a door, doesn't he?
He does, yeah, that's true.
Do you think there was a point on set? Do you think there's a point on set where John Glenn's like, okay, Kabir, you need to go up and lock the door, okay? You're going to look in the door and then close it and lock it. Do you think he ever said, didn't we do this scene already, John? We're doing it again. Do it again, Kabir.
Yeah, well,
Shouldn't I have like a big ring of keys on my belt? No. They're all in your pocket.
He's got the master key.
The master key.
Yeah.
Do you remember for a while we used to play a game on WhatsApp of guessing the emojis
Oh yeah.
that related to certain scenes? And his was the very first one that kickstarted that game. It was just the emoji of the man with a turban and a key. And you're like, is that Govinda from Octopussy? It's like, yes, it is.
Yeah. But that backgammon scene, actually, going back to that, actually, it's a really cool scene as well, a really fun scene.
There's a little moment at the end of the scene where he just he splits out this cash and gives some to Sadruddin and just said, what does he say? That should keep you in curry for a few weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, oof. That struck me as a Roger Moore ad-lib.
Yeah.
Just the way he says it, it's like a second too late. It doesn't look like it was scripted.
Yeah,
it looked like
yeah.
it was
It's
like you can almost see Roger come up with it in that split second.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And the way that Albert Moses doesn't quite know how to respond to it suggests that it was just added in by Roger.
Yeah.
I suppose they were trying. They were trying to diversify the locations and the cast, and for the most part, I mean, obviously not Kamal Khan, but you've got Kabir Bedi and Vijay, who are, at the very least, of an Asian background, as with Albert Moses. But lines like that still occasionally rear their head.
Yeah. Shall we talk about the tuk-tuk taxi chase?
Oh, I do love the tuk-tuk taxi chase. It's a lot of fun. I had a smile on my face for quite a lot of this film.
Yeah. You weren't thrown by the crowds going when the no, you're right.
Just laughing at it. I think it's a silly moment because I was showing it to my stepson for the first time. I said, "Now this is actually one of the more serious of Roger Moore's Bond films," and I repeated that every time there was a silly moment. I said, "Now remember, this is one of the more serious ones," because I think the tone, actually, the darker moments and the more serious moments are more serious than, say, The Man with the Golden Gun or The Spy Who Loved Me or Moonraker, certainly.
Yeah.
It just, occasionally, it's a weird balance between quite a brooding Cold War tense feel and just some of the most tongue-in-cheek silliness in any of the films.
Yeah, I just wonder whether the serious parts have more emotion than something like The Man with the Golden Gun that make it just resonate a bit more.
Like you say, the serious parts in this, I think, are just more serious, and whether it balances out or it creates a kind of weird tonal mess is anyone's guess, I suppose.
Yeah.
Speaking of tonal mess, then Bond has his fun with Q.
Yeah.
At Q's expense a few times.
Yeah.
Acting like a complete child with that watch camera.
I like this scene. I like how VJ is just there as an observer, just giggling at Bond's immaturity.
One thing I noticed that made me laugh when I watched this was when Roger arrives, he's got that flower wreath thing round his neck, and he sort of tosses it on Q's neck to wind him up.
Yeah.
And that's very in keeping with their characters up to that point. Q just sort of takes it off and tosses it over VJ like he's a hat stand.
Yeah, I know. I can picture it exactly. I just didn't realise, actually. Yeah.
But there's, again, great variety in the gadgets here. I love a Q scene. I miss these Q scenes,
Yeah.
where there's
Stuff going on and
just nonsense.
Yeah.
Like those climbing ropes, and that's a brilliant gag about keeping it up.
Yeah.
Forgive my curiosity, but what is that?
That's my little Octopussy.
Bond then hooks up with Magda, who I don't really know what her motivations are at this point, but it just seems like the writers are just kind of ticking off their checklist of, it's been a while since Bond got any, let's throw a woman at her.
I mentioned it before. Is she Kamal Khan's girlfriend, or
Well, until
or
you
what?
mentioned that, it hadn't occurred to me. I don't really know. I guess so.
Because
I
she's
guess,
staying at his
or-
place. Obviously,
Mistress, companion,
Yeah.
friend,
who knows? Who
second
knows?
in charge.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I just
There is
presumed that she was just working on behalf of Octopussy to,
Yeah, she's part of that group.
yeah. But
Another Swede. Mm-hmm. They do like putting Swedish actresses together, don't they?
that's true.
They put Maud Adams and Britt Eklund together, and now they've put Maud Adams and Christina Wayborn together.
Yeah, and I really like her. She plays the part really well. In fact, when I was younger, I didn't even realise she comes back again. I thought she was a completely different person when she steals the wallet of the general later on. I didn't even know that was the same girl.
Really?
Yeah. That's how oblivious I was. I think she just has a different hairstyle, and it's like, oh, that's a different person. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Good evening.
Well rested? I believe you and Miss Magda have met.
It was a pleasure.
You're too kind.
Bond gets knocked out after Magda leaves.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up at the Monsoon Palace and has dinner.
Yep.
That scene seems to serve very little purpose other than to show that Kamal Khan is quite heartless when it comes to torture methods.
Yeah. It's one of those typical Bond / villain dinner meetings that we've seen in other Bond films. But
Yes. I will eventually kill you, but for now I will
yes,
wine and dine you.
I want information, that sort of thing. But
But he doesn't get any. All he does is say, these are the methods that we will use to get the information from you eventually.
yeah,
Good night.
yeah. Enjoy escaping from the room that I put you in.
Yes. I mean, I think Bond could have probably just knocked the door down and taken that one guy out if he'd tried hard enough.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Orlov turns up, doesn't he? And does he destroy the real egg?
he destroys the one that... Yeah.
This is what it always got me. It's because Bond switches the egg.
Bond takes the real egg at the auction,
Yes.
and then Q puts the listening bug in it.
Yeah.
So it must be the real one that he destroys.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So Orlov's like, oh, we've had enough of this fake, and then smashes it, doesn't he?
But then it seems to not really revolve around the egg anymore.
No,
it
that's
seems
the
to
end
be
of the
more
egg.
about this Romanov star thing.
Yeah,
seems more
yeah,
important
yeah.
at this point, which is
Yeah.
why I find the smuggling part a little bit confusing and a little bit vague and nondescript. Because the egg has been the focal point up until this point at the auction and stuff, and it's what led to Kamal Khan. But then at a certain point, it's just like, we're done here. We don't need this egg anymore. Eggs are boring. I don't know what the reveal of the tracker actually tells Kamal Khan, because they've already decided that they need to get rid of Bond.
Yeah.
I'm like, but you've already decided you're going to kill him. What does finding that listening bug actually prove that you didn't already know? You knew he was no good.
Yeah.
It's all just a little bit...
Yeah, the egg
confusing.
Yeah, the egg thing just it just, like I say, it doesn't go anywhere there.
Yeah. But then they find out that he's escaped,
Yep.
and Kamal Khan is not too fussed. He's reading a book. He's got his reading glasses on. He's like, that's fine. We'll track him.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, track him? Why? Have they got a tracking device? No. He means, like, track him like a hunter.
Yeah, yeah. And I there are issues with this scene, but I really like it.
I can't think of any issues with this scene.
I like the fact that Bond is literally like trying to escape death after like round every corner he turns.
Do you like the fact that he hides in that body bag?
I do. I think it's
Can you do an impression of the sound he makes when he scares those two guys?
whoa. That's my impression.
Very good. Very good.
But yeah, I mean, surely he has no idea where he is or anything like that when he's.
I mean, when he says sit to that tiger, there were giggles in the room when I was watching it, and not just from me.
I mean, that was based on an actual... I mean, it's before our time, but obviously based on a TV show. There was a lady who would say, sit, and that's Roger Moore's impression of her.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I need to Google this now.
Oh, is it Barbara Woodhouse?
Yes, that's the one. You found it before I have.
Sit right up to the shoulder, very smartly. I'll do it again. Sit.
Sit.
So it's meant to be an impression of that, but obviously that's something that's not aged well because nobody knows what that's meant to be.
Well, I think the joke still works as just him telling a tiger to sit.
Yeah,
I didn't realise the
I
Barbara
agree.
Woodhouse connection. But
Yeah.
the likelihood of that working is minute, but it's funny.
The thing is, I have no issues with that at all. I don't have a problem with that.
No, it's brilliant.
I-
Tonally, that's just right, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I do have issues with the Tarzan yell as he's swinging through on the vines.
Okay, let's get into this then. There is the sound of a Tarzan yell as Bond swings from the vines.
Yes, that is right. And it's not Roger Moore yelling that Tarzan yell either.
That's a stock sound effect from a previous film or TV serial, I imagine.
Yeah, and you can tell.
Yeah. The quality of the sound is older than the 80s.
Yeah.
Now, here's my thinking. This is my take, and I don't know if yours matches mine.
Go on.
I don't think Bond is making a Tarzan yell.
No.
I think that is played as almost like music.
Yes.
That is a humorous musical reference almost.
Like the whistle from The Man with the Golden Gun, when he does the flip, yeah.
Obviously, the car isn't making that whistle. It's an audio joke, and I think the Tarzan yell is for the audience of the movie. It's not a sound within the world of the movie.
No, I'd like to believe that as well as.
And if the Tarzan films had a super famous musical riff, they might have equally played that at the same time. But instead, rather than playing a snippet of music, they've played a snippet of sound from the Tarzan films or TV. But in my head, I treat that as non-diegetic accompaniment.
Yeah, and he doesn't get the greatest of landings. He falls into the water and then he gets leeches on him and he has to get the leech off. And it's like,
There's a classic, what's it called? A Texas switch, is it? You know when like a stuntman would drop down behind something and then the actor would pop out?
Yeah.
That's a very, very close one because it's like through the reeds and you think, God, can you see them both at one point? But no, it's done very, very well that they lined it up just right.
But you don't really pay attention because of how distracting the Tarzan yell is. So
You're still reeling from that.
yes, yeah.
I like this scene in particular because for some reason, Kamal Khan acts drunk in this scene and no other scene. He just seems kind of not the same character that we've just seen.
Kill him? Or something, was he say, kill him?
I was like, God, let the sport commence. And he's just slurring his words. And he's like, Mr. Bond is indeed a rare breed, soon to be made extinct. He just seems a bit tipsy. And I wonder, did they film this scene first and then they tell him to tone it down? Or, I don't know, maybe there was a scene missing before this where he got wasted.
But I love those line deliveries. I think that's what makes him a really entertaining villain.
Yeah, it's good fun. It doesn't outstay its welcome, this scene. It's over just in the right amount of time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see like a protracted sequence of this hunting thing, but you know, he manages to escape to that tourist boat just in time, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Tarzan yell, I've learnt to live with it.
Yep. And from Tarzan yell to crocodile costume is what happens next.
Have we discussed how this works in previous episodes? The angle of Bond's body would suggest that he's sort of swimming beneath the crocodile and poking his head out, rather than lying belly down at the surface. But, I mean,
I
I'll
would
say it again.
Yeah.
Once again, there were giggles and laughter in the room. And maybe that's all it needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. I've learned to live with it. It doesn't require or bear up to close scrutiny. Particularly, if you prefer your Bonds the Daniel Craig style, then this is probably
Not your Bond film.
not for you. And this little section in the middle here is going to make sure you're aware of that if you weren't already. So, bear in mind, I've been watching this with a 10-year-old. And at every instance like this, where there's been something notably silly, I've turned and said, no, remember, this is one of the more serious Bond movies that he did. And he would do a knowing nod and go, oh, okay, yeah, very serious, and he'd giggle. But what follows is what he described as the most silly moment of the film. And it's not the crocodile, it's not the Tarzan yell.
It's the octopus bed.
No.
Oh,
What my 10-year-old stepson described as the silliest moment of this film is where Bond arrives at the island of Octopussy and her women friends, and he watches her naked from behind the bush. And to quote Yoda, truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
yeah.
The fact that this is a movie where he dresses as a gorilla, a clown, a fake crocodile, he does a Tarzan yell, and to a 10-year-old boy, the silliest thing in this movie is him watching a naked woman in a pool.
For me, it's a highlight. Yeah, Bond finally meets Octopussy at this point then, doesn't he?
I wondered when you might arrive.
So you are the mysterious Octopussy.
And you are James Bond, 007 licensed to kill. Am I to be your target for tonight?
Roger has I keep saying Roger. Bond has a brief moment with Octopussy, which I like the sort of more mature relationship they have, and they kind of seem genuinely interested in each other's backstories and how the Octopussy cult came about.
Yep. I really like how the all-time high instrumental really works in the scene as well as...
Bond only commits assault for a few seconds before it becomes consensual.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, of course.
Yes, every Bond film from this age and before has at least one moment that makes you question whether it's suitable for a 10-year-old these days. And this was the moment for me where I just found myself going, don't do that, as he pushes himself into...
It's done us no harm, and I grew up with these films as did you.
We can separate
yes,
character
absolutely
from reality. That is a hell of a bed, isn't it?
It is a great bed. I want one.
She had to ask for that. It wasn't there already, was it? Someone had to ask.
Oh,
for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So Bond and Octopussy get into the octopus bed. And then we have to say goodbye to VJ. And
oh, of course, yeah.
it's always sad, but I thought he was in it a little bit more than he is. I always wish there was a little bit more VJ.
Yeah, I would have liked more VJ.
Poor VJ.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
So, that's almost the end of the India section of this movie.
Yep.
Where Bond has discovered the next part of the plan that's going to take him into Germany. Now, it's worth remembering at this time, in 1983, the wall was still up, the country was still divided, and we get a glimpse, really, into that Cold War era Checkpoint Charlie and what it looked like at that point. It's a bit of a time capsule, really.
It is, yeah. It's weird. Having been to Berlin, yeah, it's almost like a completely different country.
So we have one of our several circus scenes, which is really the part of the film that I remember when I think about Octopussy.
Yeah.
I think for me this is entering into the sort of second peak. I think maybe some of the India stuff goes on a little while.
Yeah, I think you're right when you said it before. It's quite a long time you spend there. It does need a little bit of a change in pace, and I think this is what brings it, that the whole Octopussy circus and stuff, and the train sequence and stuff like that, it just separates it a bit.
Bond's in another disguise. He's in a circus crew jacket.
Oh, he is actually, yeah. Forget about that disguise. So look, we should do a little tally of how many disguises he has, shouldn't we, really?
Someone can tell us in the comments.
Yeah.
I'm not counting it.
But he witnesses them switch the jewellery with a bomb.
Yeah, so it's interesting, like, how much of the plot has actually happened in India? We spent an awful lot of time there.
Yeah.
But it all really seems to come down to now the plot starts up again. Bond's been looking for clues and stuff, but all he's really managed to do is find out that Kamal Khan's heading to Germany at some point.
Yeah, and he found Octopussy's leaflet and Octopussy Circus
in quick
leaflet.
succession. He discovers the switch, he discovers the plan with the bomb, and we had that brilliant scene where he confronts General Orlov.
Yeah. I just love that, like, who are you? It's like, I'm British Secret Service. It's a good scene. I just love that scene.
He does a proper full-on headshot on that guy who bursts in on him as well.
Yeah, it's
right between the eyes.
Yeah, but then begins a really frantic chase to stop that bomb. And this is one of my highlights of the franchise, let alone not just the film.
Well, we've teased it up until here, James. I think you even mentioned it last episode when you said you look forward to talking about it.
Well, the thing is, we've seen him in all these disguises, and the best disguise in that room would be that gorilla suit. Do you not agree? How else would he be able to, like, make sure he's in that room where the bomb is without being caught?
Hide?
Well, does he not hide at first, or does
He could have just stayed on the roof and listen in, or hide under a pile of clothes or behind some boxes.
They're going through like checkpoints. They might get caught. They might get caught on the roof.
Okay.
Yeah. And
are you expecting a big fight from me on this, James?
I was hoping to, yeah, but I think you agree with me.
I think it's when you watch a film like this with a 10-year-old, you learn to laugh at places you might have got just angry at on your own. I can't defend it because I don't fully believe what you're saying, but even if I did, right?
Yeah.
Even if I thought, okay, maybe he could step into it. Firstly, can you just step into it from the back?
I see it as the suit in Iron Man 3, that little, and he just got in like that. You can walk in and out of. I see it like
every
that,
bit as high tech as that. Automatic opening and closing.
Yeah. No, I think he just walks into it and it just pops open or closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. If I were to concede that hiding in the gorilla suit was the only way for Bond to eavesdrop on the plan and find out what he needed to know, which is, in fact, very important information, if I were to concede that's the only way to do it, at the very least, if it were me, I would have stood still.
Yeah. I mean, he forgets that he's in the gorilla suit at one point. But I would have done that. Sometimes I've forgotten to put my watch on sometimes, and I look at my watch and I forget it's
Did
not
he ever
there.
watch on?
Well,
because I don't think you quite see it. It's sort of not quite in shot.
No.
We see him look as if he's got one. I like to imagine he got into the gorilla suit and then put his own watch on over the top of the gorilla suit.
Well, I like to just believe that he forgets that he's got the gorilla suit on. He looks at his watch. I've not got my watch.
You might as well forget he's meant to be hiding. You might as well just step out and sit with them and go, what are we talking about? Bond should not forget he's in a gorilla suit. Who does that? I don't know that I can really give this one a pass.
All right. What would you, if you could remove one moment from this film, would it be the gorilla suit, or would it be the Tarzan yell and replace it with like the Bond theme or something?
The Tarzan yell.
Yeah, you see? Yeah.
Because it wouldn't change the film. Like I don't want any part of this film changing now.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, what you've done there, James, is quite cunningly got me to realise how I feel about this movie before I even realised how I felt about it. Because you just gave me the option to take a moment out that I'm complaining about, and I chose not to.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? Either tells you that I think it's genuinely for the betterment of the film, or I am an absolute sucker for nostalgia, and I don't want you changing anything I grew up with.
Yeah. Well,
Whether it would be objectively for the good or not.
Yeah. That's
It's probably the latter, if I have to say it.
okay.
My problem is more the way it's edited. There doesn't seem to be time for him to get out of it.
I knew you'd say that. But again, if he had like an Iron Man-esque suit where it's just like pops up and gets out.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
He must be able. There must be a slit in the back that he can kind of just duck out of.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, no one can see me, but yeah, I'm just like kind of sneaking out.
I reckon that's maybe what the point of it is. Maybe the point of it is that they're going to do some kind of disappearing gorilla act thing where it involves someone quickly slipping out of the costume.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Solved. So in this sequence, there's some absolutely extraordinary stunt work going on, which is easily overlooked because some of it's played without really any fanfare. There's very little music during this scene.
Yep.
A lot of it's sort of played in kind of static wides or tracking wides, but it's easy to forget that's a real person on a real train.
Yeah, I think someone got injured when this happened.
Yeah,
as well.
Martin Grace, who doubled for Roger Moore, was hanging on the side, and the train went into an area of the track that had not been checked and hit a concrete wall or something. I think he fractured his hip.
Yeah.
Which sounds incredibly painful, but it's a miracle that he hung on. Otherwise, I think he might have gone underneath. But
I mean, I find this train sequence actually more interesting than the one we get in Skyfall. I think it's...
Everything in this film is more interesting than anything in Skyfall. Everything in this film is more interesting than anything we get in any Daniel Craig movie.
Yeah.
Because the stunts feel real. And even if the stunts were real in Daniel Craig's films, they don't feel real because they're overshot or over-edited. And sometimes it's best just to get a stuntman to do something really, really impressive and just simply point the camera at it. You know?
Yeah.
Even the parkour stuff in Casino Royale is let down by the fact that they gave the stunt performer a wig that's 5 shades too blonde. Watch it again and let me ruin that sequence for you with that in mind. Because they obviously looked at the headlines at the time and were like, oh, he's the blonde Bond. Let's get the stunt guy as a blonde wig. Daniel Craig never had blonde hair. But the stunt guy does.
Yeah. Be interesting for the Casino Royale episode when we get to that then.
We won't make it that far, John. We'll be 80 before then.
But yeah, no, it's a really, really good sequence.
So Bond has to make his way to the circus, and I think it's quite tense at this point. We keep seeing the bomb ticking. It's that old sort of Hitchcockian trick of show a timer on a bomb ticking down while people are having conversations or while people are struggling to get the car started or whatever, and it's that ticking time bomb, a literal ticking bomb.
Yeah, so he gets to the military base. Now, the question I have for you, this is how I convince myself of the way this film works, is the clown outfit a preset piece of kit? Because obviously he wears exactly the same one as not only 009 wears, but also the same one that another clown that gets mistaken for him wears. Is it just a preset thing?
Well, I imagine 009, when he was wearing it, was at another Octopussy circus somewhere.
In a clown disguise.
Maybe that's where he took the egg from in the first place, from somewhere. So it's obviously the uniform of the Octopussy circus, at the very least.
Yeah.
My question really is, we see this bomb timer ticking down, and we see it at 5 minutes, we see it at 4 minutes something.
Yeah.
Bond seems to take about a minute to get into this outfit.
I believe he goes into that little caravan and there's already like makeup people there, and it's like,
Oh, you think someone does it for him?
yeah, and it's like, oh, come here, quick, we've not got time. Clown, which clown are you? Clown 4. Okay, I'll put the clown 4 outfit on.
I always pictured him just racing around, scurrying, because he knows he's got 5 minutes left. What's he doing sitting in a makeup chair? I picture him like scurrying around, grabbing stuff. I can picture like the costume, fine. The nose, the hat, fine. It's the makeup that I have an issue with. I can picture him like grab a sponge, dab, 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 dab.
Yeah.
It's the sort of eyeliner and the tears and the...
Oh, yeah.
Why would you bother with that?
Well, I think all we need is just one more scene in that little caravan just to answer that question.
Or just make it a little bit longer left on the clock.
Yeah, maybe.
If he'd given himself, well, okay, I've got 15 minutes, I've got to blend in, fine. But he does it all in less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
Timing abnormalities aside, I actually find this scene really good and really tense.
Well, we've mentioned it before that a lot of critics of this film, when they criticise it, they go, oh yeah, it's the one where Roger Moore dresses as a clown. I mean, that sums this film up. But it's like, actually, no, this is the most serious part of the film where he is dressed as a clown trying to stop a nuclear bomb from killing loads of innocent people. Yeah, it's the best scene of the film.
Honestly, I got goosebumps when he said, "Let me go, damn it, there's a bomb in there."
Oh, yeah, and then you hear the crowds go, it's like...
Because it's just desperation. He's being held back and he knows he's got 90 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the timing on how quickly he got into that outfit is the only question I have. Not the fact that he gets into it. If you're going to try and get into a circus, dressing as one of the performers is the best way to do it.
Yeah. I also love it when he goes to the general. It's like, General, there's a bomb in that cannon. I just love looking at Octopussy and Magda's reactions, because obviously they presumed Bond was dead. And just their faces just change as they realise, hang on, what is going on here?
Yeah.
All great acting all around in that scene. Best scene by
And they're like, thanks, pal. Thanks, buddy. You did great. Screw you, General. You almost got us killed.
Yeah.
And then we're back at the Monsoon Palace because Octopussy is out for revenge, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I'll say something here, and I could be wrong, but I think these guards that are getting taken out by these women, I think they're meant to be Indians. I don't think they are.
I mean,
all I will say is cast people who are Indians to play Indian characters.
Yeah.
That looks kind of like a set, that wall part.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was done back at the studio in England, and maybe they're just stunt performers with darker makeup on them.
Most of that whole section definitely feels like a stage at Pinewood.
Yes. But let's just agree, going forward, that we won't use brown face or black face or any other face.
Yeah.
Wherever possible, can we just not paint the stunt guys a different colour?
Yeah.
Glad we agree. So then it's all wrapped up fairly quickly. A bit of a shootout in the palace while Kamal and Gobinda make their escape with Octopussy. She's rather unceremoniously knocked out and chucked on a horse at one point, which is a bit abrupt.
Yeah.
So wrapping it up fairly quickly, as does the movie. Bond gets on the plane on that very, very fast horse that he manages to find.
Yep. And again, stunt work, amazing again.
Not, I have to say, in spite of the stunt work, not my all-time favourite finale.
It's
It
over
looks
quite
incredibly
quickly,
dangerous. It doesn't have the sort of memorable punchline that, you know, the Spy Who Loved Me stunt work had. Part of the issue, I think, is that for me, that bomb defusal part earlier on is such a peak of the movie that, through no fault of its own, it's all downhill from here kind of feeling of just slowly wrap it up. And it is fairly quickly. You know, there's a very, very brief MI6 sequence that then transitions to the boat where Bond and Octopussy are.
Yep.
And there you go.
Yeah, the end.
So, I think I can anticipate some of these, James, but that was Octopussy. High points, low points. What's your conclusion here?
I mean, I think we'll both agree that the high point is the circus bomb defusal scene. And low point, it has to be that Tarzan yell. There's no doubt about it. That is the highs and lows for me.
I agree with the specific highs and lows. I think as I say, I did sort of get mild goosebumps on that on that bomb defusal part. The low points throughout. Yes, there's some questionable sound effects here, like the Tarzan bit. The gorilla suit's difficult to justify. But in terms of the tone, I guess there's a little sagging middle. I don't think it's as tight as For Your Eyes Only. I don't think it's consistent. I don't think the plot is as clear as some of his others. Even For Your Eyes Only, which doesn't have the most clearly defined plot, I still found to be a generally more tightly paced, consistently toned movie.
Yeah.
And this one just seems a little bit more baggy, a little bit more bloated and less focused. But I smiled a lot. I giggled a lot. I saw it referred to as one of the best bad Bond movies. And my instinct immediately is to argue that it's not a bad Bond movie.
Yeah, I always see it placed in the lower sections of Bond rankings, and it really annoys me because I don't think they're watching the same movie.
While I don't agree it's a bad movie, I don't even agree it's a bad Bond movie. I can kind of understand the sentiment of like, oh, it's one of the best bad Bond movies. In as much as it really shouldn't work. With all the silly gags they're throwing at it, and the tonal inconsistencies between the seriousness of the serious parts and the silliness of the silly parts, it really should work a lot less than it does. And I think it only ever really works so much, but I wouldn't change a thing about it. Maybe except the Tarzan yell, now that you've mentioned it. I think you could tighten it up a bit, a little bit more clarity around plot.
Yeah, it has its issues.
One or two fewer gags would probably help. Lose the Tarzan, lose the gorilla, perhaps.
Nah.
It's not going to be in my top 5. It's probably upper middle.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I would say the same.
Because I've grown to love For Your Eyes Only so much, in my older age, I really appreciate that movie more and more as time goes on. For me, Octopussy is sort of, if you've just watched For Your Eyes Only and you want more, then just watch Octopussy. It's not as tight, it's not as consistent, it's not even as good, but it's the closest you get to just more For Your Eyes Only, in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
There we go, that was Octopussy. Let's play games with James. So, James, we've had our Octopussy discussion, and what I wanted to do here was something a little bit different from previous games with James. I wanted to make a quiz that was potentially more accessible to some of our perhaps more casual listeners out there. So what I've done is create a quiz specifically around Octopussy.
Oh, okay.
And it's sort of a how much were you paying attention type quiz.
No, okay. This is going to be a 0 points result. I can see it already.
So this is what I'm calling Octoquizzy.
God. Are you just calling things anything with octo at the start of the thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was Factopussy.
Factopussy. Right, okay.
This is Octoquizzy.
Okay, right, okay, got you.
There are 10 questions.
Yep.
There are multiple choice for each one.
Oh, okay.
But what I thought I would do, because I actually tested this quiz on my wife to see how she got on. I knew it would be a while before we edited this and released it, so I thought I needed to test her while she still could remember the film. And she suggested that I don't give you the multiple choice at first.
Okay.
That I give you the option to answer without the multiple choice. Because she wants to see you suffer.
Thanks. Thank
you. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to award 2 points for a correct answer if you don't need the multiple choice.
Okay.
If you opt to hear the choices, then you will only be able to win 1 point for it. Is that clear?
Yes. How many did your wife get right?
I'll tell you at the end.
Okay.
But before we begin, James,
God.
I will need a sound from you to
Okay.
play in the event that you get an answer correct.
Okay. I'm going to go with a question right. Fancy that. That was a quote from Octopussy, if you didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm trying to place it. Is that double sixes?
Double sixes. Fancy that, yes.
Okay, and can I get a sound from you for when you get a question wrong?
A disgrace to the podcast.
Lovely. Some deep cut references there. Okay, I don't think you'll struggle too much with these. This might be your first clean sweep.
Famous
Just
last
putting it
words.
out there.
But okay, right, cool. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay, question number 1. When Bond goes undercover as Colonel Toro, what first name is listed on his ID badge?
What's Toro's first name?
Do you wish to have the multiple choice, or do you want to go for it without? If you go for it without and get it wrong, you will not get to hear the options.
I think I probably would get it if I had the options. So I don't think I would without. So let's go for the options. Unfortunately.
Okay, is it A, Marcos, B, Luis, or C, Pedro?
Oh God, I thought I would get it with the options. Never mind that. I'm going to go with Luis. A question right. Fancy that.
It is Luis.
Yeah.
Or Louis. I don't know
Louis.
how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Well done. Question 2. In the Moscow war room scene, how many seats are there at the table?
I'm just trying to draw how many I think there would be. I'll go with 9. I'm just going to go for it. Let's try and do it without 9.
I can tell you the options were 9, 10, or 11.
Okay, so I've gone for one of the options. A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect, James.
Oh,
The answer is 11.
11, really?
Question 3. In Q's lab, Bond is given a fountain pen that can, among other things, release a mixture of which 2 acids said to dissolve all metals?
Yeah, I'm going to
Would you like to hear the options?
Yeah, I'm going to have to have the options.
Is it A, nitric and sulfuric acid, B, nitric and hydrochloric acid, or C, sulfuric and hydrochloric acid?
You know what? I feel like it was sulfuric, just because I remember thinking. I sort of feel like it was something where, like, why would it have sulfuric as part of a thing? It smells. Why would that be something? Go for the first one, nitric and sulfuric. A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect,
Oh, for
James.
God's sake.
The answer is B, nitric and hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get you back on track.
Okay.
Question number 4. Bond's watch, which contains a radio directional finder, is by which manufacturer?
It's a Casio. A disgrace to the podcast.
Casio is incorrect, James. Casio is not one of the options. The options were Seiko, Breitling, or Pulsar.
Oh, it's a psycho, isn't it? Oh, well, yeah.
Perhaps you should have just opted to hear the
Yeah,
multiple choice.
never mind.
Question 5. When Bond arrives for dinner with Magda and Kamal Khan, what is the first item on the menu?
The goat's head. I feel like that wasn't the first item. I'm gonna play it safe. Give me the clues. Give me the options.
The multiple choice options are
Yep.
A, tagine, B, soufflé, or C, œuf en cocotte.
I'll go with C.
You're going with C, œuf en cocotte.
Yes. A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect, James.
Why would you have that
Advice.
as an option? I only went with it for that because I thought, why would you put that as an option on there? Go on. What was it? Souffle.
The soufflé
Yeah.
can't wait.
Yep.
Question 6.
Yep. Go for it.
When M meets Bond in Berlin, what is the name he gives to him to use as cover in order to enter East Germany?
Oh my God. Had it?
Would you like to hear the options?
Yeah. I have to have the options for this one.
Your options are A, Charles Horton, B, Charles Matheson. C. Charles Selby.
Oh my god, they all sound like that. I can imagine them being said. I'm just going to go with Selby.
You're going with C. Charles Selby.
Yes.
A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect, James.
Oh.
The correct answer was A. Charles Horton, manufacturer's representative from Leeds, visiting furniture factories in East Germany.
Oh my god.
Apparently.
This is clearly something I've never even thought about. Well,
Question number 7.
there's no way Katie got all these right.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Question number 7.
Yep.
Whose outfit does Bond steal on the train after hiding their body in a circus cannon?
Right. It has to be Mishka.
Your options there, James, were A. Mishka, B. Grishka, C. Penelope Smallbone.
It has to be Mishka.
A question right. Fancy that.
That is correct,
Yes.
James. Well done. For 2 points.
Only because when he gets mistaken that it is Mishka and he goes, Mishka! And he turns
Yes,
around
exactly.
and it's Bond. Yeah.
So we know that that other twin is Grishka because he calls out for his brother
Yes.
on the train.
Yeah.
Okay, question 8. When Bond dresses as the clown, what colour are the flowers on his hat?
Oh, wow. That is a question. There's a lot of orange and yellow. I could not imagine.
Knowing
them
you, James,
being-
you've probably got some merchandise in your room, so
I
don't cheat.
I do not have any photos of Roger Moore dressed as
Eyes
a clown.
forward, James, please.
Yeah.
There we go.
I feel
Close
like,
your
I
eyes.
feel like it would be orange or yellow. And I'm going for... I'm going to go with orange.
A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect.
Oh, it's yellow. It's yellow.
It is yellow.
I was close with that one.
Number 9. While clinging onto the outside of Kamal Khan's plane, which propeller does Bond disable?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, you've got 3 options. I don't know how will the third option go here. Sure, it's just left or right. I mean, is it left or right as if you're looking at... I'm just trying to imagine when he looks out the window.
When you're in the plane, it's whether it's your left or right from
Yeah,
the
okay.
pilot's
Yeah.
perspective.
I'm just trying to imagine the shot of Bond's arm pulling those cables out. Surely it'd be the side that he gets in through the door. So I think that's the left side, so I'm going to go with left.
A disgrace to the podcast.
That is incorrect, James.
So he goes on
It
the
is-
right-hand side and then goes on top of the plane and goes to the door to get Octopussy out.
Yes. So he goes to the door, then he tips upside down. He thinks he's shaken him off,
Yep.
but then Gobinder spots him out of the right-hand window on the right side engine.
Ah, God.
Okay, question 10.
Yep.
At the end of the credits, what immediately follows the words, James Bond will return?
I feel like this is a trick question. Oh, I know why. Okay, right, yeah. James Bond will return in From a View to a Kill.
A question right. Fancy that.
That is correct, James. Well done. You cunningly avoided my trap.
Yes.
There. The options were In a View to a Kill, Nothing, or Something Else. The answer is Something Else, and you got it.
Yes.
So, it does say James Bond will return in From a View to a Kill, which is, of course, the original Fleming short story title.
Yes.
And Bond did return in A View to a Kill, which I think was rightly simplified, because A View to a Kill is the much snappier title.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, given that you had the option there to answer ahead of the multiple choice, and you did so on 2 of which you got right, which takes your grand score out of a possible 20 to 5.
What? Really? I thought, oh my God, that is awful.
You got the first question correct for 1 point, and you only got 2 other questions correct, both of which you got 2 points for. So you did shockingly badly. You asked how my wife did. Katie, of course, she had the multiple choice options available to her from the beginning. So her score is only out of 10, but she scored 7 out of 10.
She's just watched the film. That's what I'm going to say. That's all my excuse anyway. It's
What, that you didn't do your homework for the podcast?
Well, I felt like having watched it like a few months ago would have been fresh enough for me.
I thought you had seen this film so much that that it would live rent free in your head, that you'd be able to tell me these details.
I'm telling you now, I thought that too. But clearly that is not the case, and I need to watch this more often, more than the 100 times I've probably already seen it.
This is only the second time that Katie had watched it.
Oh yeah, okay, stop rubbing it in. Right, okay.
She'll be very pleased.
Yeah.
To have bested an expert such as yourself.
It's good though. I like that. I like that little quiz. It's,
Did you enjoy that format? Do you think that's something I should return to?
I'd happily do that for View to a Kill.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And maybe I will come back to this format, and you can do a little bit better than 5 out of 20.
Yeah.
Well, we know what you scored, James, because I was keeping count. But I think you, just like me, want to hear from the text-to-speech person anyway.
Go on, let rub it in.
James scored 5 out of 20. That's honestly so disappointing. I had such high hopes for this one. Maybe that will teach him to do his homework before recording the podcast. Your audience deserves more commitment from you, James. They deserve more than 5 out of 20. I repeat, 5 out of 20.
Yeah. I didn't need the score again anyway, to be fair, so you should have just shut up anyway in the first place, so it would have been better.
Well, she's on the payroll, so we need to give her some work to do.
Yeah, well, she just shouldn't be so mean.
She's got a better salary than I do for Bon Jam. I don't know how she did it. I think she's sleeping with one of the presenters.
Yeah.
And it's not me, James. I don't know what that means. And on that note, that was Games with James.
Games with James.
So there you go, that was our Octopussy episode. Don't forget you can like, share and subscribe. Follow us on all of your preferred social media platforms at BonJamCast. You can listen to us on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review, that would be most appreciated. We're going to take a little break after the next episode. There'll be another Games with James best bits coming up, but after that you might not hear from us for a little while. And that is because I am about to have a baby girl. And I will be far too busy
changing nappies,
mopping up vomit.
Yes.
And as you well know, James, because you were doing that just before we recorded, weren't you?
Yes. I certainly was. And yes, you've got lots to look forward to.
When we get around to doing A View to a Kill, we might be able to squeeze it in between... Feeds. Yes. We'll get her on as a guest.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll hear her crying in the background.
So in the meantime, enjoy the best bits of Games with James. Enjoy rewatching and re-listening to all of the Bon Jam moments from the past 6 years. And we will be back with you whenever we can, when my daughter has grown up and moved out. So until then, James.
Don't forget to spread that jam.
Spread that jam, everyone, and take care.
Cheerio.